grassroots basketball because of the exposure. You know, when you hit that circuit, when you go to EYBL and you hit those tournaments, you know that these are all the guys that you've been following.
Hey!
Against all this great competition. I remember traveling out to Oakland from Akron, Ohio. It was like a culture shock.
When LeBron James came and played with the Soldiers, he liked what we stood for. And back then, anybody can jump on your roster. If they like to play with each other, they played with each other.
Just to be a part of a different culture and to see how my game can fit not only in the Midwest, but also can fit a West Coast style as well, I think it definitely helped my game out. It was definitely a sense of pride when you put that Oakland Soldiers uniform on, man.
At the end of the day, this is a war. This ain't no joke. I want you to have fun, but people going for your spots.
You felt like everybody wanted to beat you. We just had a swag about us.
That right there was a look at Fox Sports' debut series, Elite Youth, which takes a deep dive into Nike's EYBL, the ultimate proving ground for the nation's top youth basketball talent. The four-part series, premieres tonight, 11 Eastern on FS1. I've actually already seen part one of this. It's exceptional. Maverick Carter, who's a big part of this, along with LeBron, they did a wonderful job with it. My son was on the EYBL circuit down in Houston, and so I was able to travel with him and the team. That you guys know this as well as I do. These are the best of the nation's youth basketball talent, and this series kind of gives you an inside look at it. It's really outstanding.
And it's pretty cool to preview the young talent that's up and coming before they get to the college ranks. So that's dope.
It's a great inside look. When this thing, there's a lot of pressure on young kids, but then you have great coaches in those types of leagues that can develop these players, and you see these guys sticking with them throughout their career.
And there's just quickly here, there's a stigma attached to AAU basketball. And listen, there's some seedy sides to it. Not everything's great, but there are also some truly dedicated, way underpaid coaches that are just helping these young people that are either trying to help them get college scholarships or just help them on to the next part of their life. This gives you a look at that, and you get a look at some guys who at some point, a few years from now, you're going to see in the NBA. So it starts tonight, 11 Eastern on FS1. You got to check it out. Vikings and Saints face off on Fox at 11 a.m. And according to our friends at Fox Bet, New Orleans 7.5-point favorites. That's the largest spread of all the wild card games this weekend. But if you tease that down, you can get them done. Canty, will the Saints dominate this game?
Yeah, I think the Saints will dominate this game. When you look at the matchup, you say the Saints have the edge in a couple of critical areas of this game. You start looking at the quarterback being protected. I think that the Saints have one of the best duos for the offensive tackles in the National Football League, and Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead. Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in getting the ball out of his hands. He's second quickest from snap to pass in terms of getting the ball out. And then that Vikings defense is sixth worst in terms of opposing QB completion percentage. And we know Drew Brees is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So I just look at this from the standpoint of Drew Brees being able to get the ball out on time to his guys and let his playmakers do the heavy lifting. The Vikings haven't been great in terms of being able to hold up in pass coverage against opposing wide receivers. So that has to be an area of a little bit concern. And then if you flip it and look at the Saints defense going up against that Vikings offense, the Saints defense hasn't given up a 100-yard rusher all year. And Dalvin Cook hasn't averaged more than 4 yards a carry since week 8. So, I mean, we're talking about Dalvin Cook and his health and being able to add that dynamic guy in the backfield to take pressure off of Kirk Cousins. But Dalvin Cook of late hasn't been the guy that we saw in the first half of the season. So for all of those reasons, I have to lean heavily toward the New Orleans Saints.
When you look at the Vikings, the biggest question, just like you mentioned, is can they run the ball enough to dominate time of possession and take the pressure off of Kirk Cousins? Can they put their quarterback in a position where he doesn't have to go try to score 30 points by himself? He doesn't have to be the hero, because we've all seen Kirk Cousins in primetime games not have his best games of the season. But I also got to think about the talent that they have on the outside. Can Adam Thielen, can Stephon Diggs get involved in the game and say early and often? Can they do that? If they can do that, they have a chance of scoring points against the Saints. But when you look at the Saints, I mean, they're just so, they put up so many points. In 6 of the last 7 games, they put up over 30 points. In 6 of the last 7 games, Drew Brees has a passer rating of over 100. And so he's just been special with 22 touchdowns. And so when you're playing against the 8th worst pass defense to receivers in the league, the Minnesota Vikings. I think Drew Brees, Mike Thomas, Jared Cook has a big game. They get after it just a bit. I also think that Alvin Kamara has a great opportunity against this defense of out-of-the-backfield catches in the screen game, as well as when he's displaced in the wide receiver position.
Yeah, this isn't the Vikings defense the last couple of years. 2017, Vikings #1 third down defense. 2018, Vikings #1 third down defense. This year, Vikings number 19 third down defense. It's been a huge liability for them compared to where they'd been in the past. Where they've been able to overcome it is Kirk Cousins was better, particularly after a tough first quarter of the season, those games 5 through 12. He was much better this year than last year, which helped propel them to the 10-5 start before they just didn't even care about their Week 17 matchup. The problem for them is they are playing a way overqualified 3 seed. The Saints, 13-3 most years get you a bye. The Saints this year are one George Kittle 4th down stop away against the Niners from being the 1 seed in that epic 48-46 game where if they get that stop or if that game just goes on another 2 minutes, they're 14-2, they're the 1 seed, and the Vikings are not having to go to the Superdome this week to face this team. Also, the other element for the Saints, I know we think about last year and what we say is, oh, they got screwed at the very end by the call against the Rams, and that's true. What's also true is Drew Brees was the MVP or co-MVP of the league along with Patrick Mahomes last season through the first 12 games. And then his production dropped mightily. I am not sure. One of you guys made this point a month ago, and I think it's prescient at this point. I wonder if those 5 games Drew Brees missed allowed his arm and shoulder to stay more live for late in the season at age 40. Because since Week 14, no quarterback, not Mahomes, not Lamar, not Russell, no quarterback's been better than Drew Brees since Week 14. First in the NFL in completion percentage, first in the NFL in touchdown interception ratio at 15-0, first in the NFL in passer rating at 137, first in the NFL as far as least number of times when he dropped backs, he's been pressured. To your point, those tackles are holding up. So the Saints aren't a perfect team. Your Rankins and Davenport being done for the year, I think, could hurt them later in the postseason. But I would be shocked if they lose this game at home against the Vikings. And I just feel for the Vikings that this is the team they have to go up against. I do want to toss one thing at you because we've been, even when we all agree on something, it rarely happens, but occasionally we're all wrong. If the Vikings pull off what would be the biggest upset of the weekend, do you think there's any part of Drew Brees that looks at it and says, all right, so 3 years ago, the Minneapolis Miracle got us. Last year, awful officiating got us. This year, 13-3, and we lose a home playoff game. I've broken all of Peyton Manning's records. We're not going to have a better opportunity than we had this year, healthier on offense than we had this year. I'm about to be 41. If somehow the Saints lose, do you think it's in play Drew Brees says, I've done all I need to do in this league, and he walks away?
Well, I think you always have to consider it when you're talking about a player that's Drew Brees' age. But that being said, when you look at how good this Saints team is, I mean, these guys aren't going anywhere. This is a really good football team. You saw that the defense has made strides, and then they figured out a way to continue to put playmakers around Drew Brees, even in a salary cap era, because you lose Mark Ingram, but you got Jared Cook in the passing game. And he's been a great 1-2 punch with Michael Thomas. So I just like the fact that you have so much talent in every area of this football team. That will make it a tough situation to walk away from, just because you recognize that the Saints are going to be in this position under head coach Sean Payton in next year too. They'll be in play in terms of talking about the best teams in the NFC. That's something that's hard to walk away from.
Yeah, you know, when you're a competitor like Drew Brees, and that's what you've seen throughout these years, his years in the NFL, is that he's the ultimate competitor, chip on the shoulder from the time that he was in San Diego, smaller quarterback, but still getting it done. You don't walk away from the game after you lose in the playoffs, especially when you have all the talent on your football team, like you just mentioned. You just don't walk away from that. He comes back, he leads his team. I don't know that they lose anytime soon. We talking about the playoffs here this year, but I think Drew Brees, no matter what, he comes back unless they win the Super Bowl. If they win the Super Bowl, I think that changes the dynamic. You walk away and say, hey, hands up, I did it my way. I kind of did it on the way out, and I won the Super Bowl. Now I'm talked about in the elite of elite because I got all the rings. I have at least 2, and then you have to have 2 to be in that greatest of great conversations at quarterback.
And speaking of rings, another reason Drew Brees not likely to walk away, win or lose, is those diamonds he likes so much don't pay for themselves.
That's right.
I'm just telling you, they don't. Those are expensive, man. Sometimes overpriced, I hear. Listen, man, read the headlines. Coming up, do the Patriots Patriots need Tom Brady to turn back the clock in order to advance past the Titans? That's next on First Things First. I'm just saying my man's bought